and welcome to another episode right here on Revv Inspiration. So far, we have spoken to experts in the field of finance, law, motoring, F&B, and even inspiring entrepreneurs. Today, our guest hails from a field which has always amazed me: the human mind. That's right. We're going to be speaking to an expert in sports psychology. Let's go. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, and we want to say a big Revv evolution welcome to Dr.Jay who's a specialist in sports psychology in Asia, listed in the top 20 most highly rated psychologists in Singapore 2021. Welcome, Jay. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be
Yeah,
in
me
this
too.
ride with you.
Yeah, we've been planning to do this for the longest time, and
Yeah, we
finally here we are. And the subject we're going to talk about is so interesting. And Jay, the mind, all right, being the most something that's so complex, and it's amazing that we know more about the moon than we even do about our own brain. And a growing issue in the world today is mental health struggles. And that affects us all, and especially for the young, which is something we're going to dive into in just a bit. In school to perform both academically and in the field of sports, which brings us to your specialty, basically, sports psychology.
Yes,
all right. So, you want to tell us a bit more about what have you been doing recently?
Totally. So, I guess when we look at sports psychology today, one of the key things I always think about is that it is so relatable. It's more relatable than ever before. And I think what we've learned over the years is that we can take these really high stakes moments from really top elite athletes in the world, and we can actually apply all those lessons to our lives, to all of our lives. Because if you think about it, we are actually all performers. And I believe that today in this world, we are living in a really high stress environment, and we all have this pressure to perform.
Definitely agree with you. And which brings me to a couple of questions that I have for you.
Yeah.
And by the way, Jay has a book out, okay, which we'll be talking at the end of all the questions. So get ready for that one coming real soon. All right, Jay. So our very first question. In Singapore, where there isn't many athletes or elite athletes, basically, what sort of clients do you see here in Singapore?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of people don't realize that I'm not just confined to seeing athletes. I see a wide variety of clients. So I see lots of young, developing athletes. I see students. I see corporate champions. I see execs that are creative in the advertising space.
Right.
I even see fighter jet pilots and horse trainers. So yeah, a lot of different clients.
Right. Yeah. So I said, when I first met you again, when you told me sports psychology, I was thinking as well, well, what kind of people does Jay work with? And at least now we all work with that idea.
Yes.
Okay. And jumping on to our next question. What sort of issues do you see the most, and how do you help in all the different scenarios?
Yeah, totally love to talk about that. So I guess the biggest issue that I see, hands down, is the pressure to perform with a loss in confidence and drive. And I see this across all ages, across all arenas.
Okay, when you say a loss in confidence to perform, in sports or
in everything. So sometimes it can be in their sport, so on the football pitch. Other times they've lost their confidence just in the corporate space. So I see this a lot in corporate champions who've always been so driven and so passionate about what they do, and suddenly they're starting to feel this real big dive in their confidence with their abilities, and also their drive is plummeting.
And how do you kind of remedy, and what kind of advice do you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do a variety of things, but one of the things that I'm really passionate about doing with my clients is helping them tap into what I call their performance zones. Right. So what this means is that we almost have a recipe. We all have a recipe for the things that we focus on, the things that we do when we are at our best and when we are at our worst. And that doesn't that could be if you're an athlete, that could be in the corporate space. And so I really help them understand, what are you actually doing when you are performing at your best? And you'll find that in our daily lives, there is a pattern. So you'll be doing very specific things when you are in your high performance zone. And there will be patterns there. So I help them draw that out. So for instance, usually you'd find that when you're in your high performing zone, even elite athletes find this, they are more task focused, they're more present, and they also are really flexible. So they're really good at like rolling with the punches, and you're sort of brushing off the mistakes you make, and you're just sort of getting on with it. And that's something that I see beautifully in their high performing zone. So once we can really understand what the recipe is, then I help them build systems and habits around all these great things to replicate this high performance space. And when they can do that, that's where you have like full control. That's when your confidence will start to come back, and the drive is going to go up and up.
Right. And I think this also comes in not like in a session. It takes kind of after a few sessions, because I mean, some people expect that, hey, you mean I have to come back again for another session? So that's, I think everybody's being impatient.
It's a great point. I mean, as we talk about it, yeah, it sounds like it's something you can just be like bang bang,
right, exactly,
it's done. But yeah, it does take time to kind of really shape and develop.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because everybody, I think in everybody's head was, oh, you mean all that in one session? So I just want to let them know that no, it takes a few sessions, because like you say, everything goes in stages. You can't rush it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we all want the quick fix.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, when you're really trying to do something exceptional, it does take time.
Yes,
and
all good
effort.
things take time.
That is true.
Okay, and I think the next question is really going to appeal to all the parents out there, because this involves kids. All right. So the next question is, I know you work with a lot of young adults and kids especially, and I think that the biggest issue that they have is their mobile phones. I see these guys glued to their phones day in and day out. Okay, and what advice would you give to parents about this? About what how do we get them to take their attention off the phones?
Yeah, man, this is a big deal. So I always say that one of the most frustrating things we can go through as a parent is when your child says fine when you ask them like, hey, how was your day at school, right? That's super frustrating. But when we look at the issues with the phone, I mean, that's 1,000 times more frustrating for all of us. So I think if we look at this with some of the research, you might not realize, but these days, 8 to 12-year-olds spend on average 5 hours of time on their screens. There are definitely those cases. And teens actually spend on average 7.5 hours of screen time. And that actually doesn't include time for homework or educational purposes. That's literally hands down just free time on the phone. So it definitely is an issue. And when I address this with parents, we look at 2 different styles that most parents use to deal with this issue. There's a reactive style, and there is a proactive style. Now, most parents use the reactive style. So what this looks like is whenever you see your child using the phone or not doing the right thing, you will call it out. You will tell them, no, don't do that. And if you do that enough, there's a lot of resistance that the child builds. So you get a lot of like sighing after a while. You get a lot of like no reactions, no response. They're not doing the right thing. And you also go into a pattern of nagging. And no one likes this, right? So we have to find a different approach if we're going to break the cycle. Because often what happens is once we don't break that cycle, the only option we have is to take away the phone.
Exactly, yeah.
And we all want what we can't have. Exactly. So it makes the issue much worse. So there has to be a better way. That's where the proactive style comes into play. So this is where you actually sit down with your children or your child and you map out together very clear boundaries around when, how, and what you're going to do with your phone. At home and in these particular spaces, and then you weave it into the house rules. So they still have rules around the chores they need to do, the things that maybe the sleep time, those sorts of things, and the sort of boundaries around the phone fit in with that. Now, once you've got those in place, then the child knows that if I don't follow these particular boundaries, there can be consequences. So they need to be accountable for that. And you have to be 100% consistent with following through with the consequences if they do not adhere to those boundaries. But on the flip side, it's also really important to reward good behavior when it comes to the right things and making sure that they feel that they're doing the right thing. And that gets rewarded, and then it's reinforced, and then you get a lot better results with this phone issue.
And actually I did a bit of reading of your book, and to be
Thank
honest,
you.
when I first saw the title sports psychology, I thought it was something that's going to appeal to athletes. But then as I read through it, I realized that it's actually meant for parents as well, because there were a lot of sections that you talked about where we're giving parents advice about, like you mentioned, about how to control your kids in terms of active and reactive things like that. So yeah, it's really a good book, and of course we'll be talking about it in just a minute. And okay. As I said, it's a really interesting book, and we have time now to talk about the book.
Thank you so
and
much.
let me just quickly show you guys the book. It's called Good Sport, all right? And to tell us more about the book will be the author herself.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jay, tell us a bit of some highlights about the book and why you decided to write this book.
Yeah, definitely. So the book is for parents, coaches, and teachers of young athletes. And I wanted to make this book so that parents could really start to have tools and techniques, not just for supporting your athlete, but how to talk to them before, during, and after the game. Because that's where you're going to start to create connection, better bonding. And I wanted to create something that fits this generation of children, these generation of athletes, because we know that they don't listen to instructions and advice. So we have to find something different. And my book is all about how to be that collaborative coach. So if you are a parent who's been told, Dad, do not come to my games anymore, or you're being pushed out as well, but maybe you are the invested parent who's just invested so much in your child's sport, and you might be a little afraid to kind of let go and let them make their own decisions because they might screw it up.
Right.
So if you feel like you could be in that boat, then this book is perfect for you.
Yeah. And I think the great thing about it is as I read about it, as I realized that it teaches you about balance. Because in Singapore, being a high pressurized society, it's all about getting results, and academically, and especially when you be an athlete in Singapore, is how do you kind of manage, both, right? And honestly, what I've read so far is it really gives us parents some tips on how to be a better parent and managing those expectations.
That's perfectly put.
All right.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Well, I guess that's all the time we have for right here, and we want to say a very big Revv thank you to Dr. JayLeenair for joining us right here on Revv Inspiration. Yeah, and if you have any questions for Dr. Jay, how can anybody reach you?
Yes, you can find me on my website. It is mentalnotespsych.com.
Okay.
Or you also have my contact details on the website.
Yes, I do. Okay.
So I'm always open to taking WhatsApp messages and even calls.
Right. And if you want to see Dr. Jay again right here on Revv Inspiration, do drop us a line as well, and with more questions. And of course, we will try to get to see if Dr. Jay has some time to spend with us again right here.
I would love that.
And on behalf of myself, Rene, and Dr. Jay, we want to say a big Revv thank you, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Bye, guys. Thank you.